It's really good to be here today. The theme of this presentation is about surviving and thriving in a time of intense change. When I look at people that have been successful over the last few years and today, one thing always comes to mind is how committed they are. Now, many of you probably know this example, but the difference between being involved and committed, the chicken and the pig, are you all familiar with that? Well, the way it goes is, in a bacon and egg breakfast, the chicken is involved, but the pig is committed. I love that. I know there's a lot of vegetarians in the audience, so I apologize for this analogy, but I hope you permit it with me being British. And I think that's the mindset to survive in the age in which we live. If you go half-hearted into anything, you're in deep, deep, deep trouble. I happen to be 40 years old. I think it's young. My children and nephews think it's old. But in this day and age, with all the changes happening, I do feel old. But if you ask my spirit, I'll tell you I feel like I'm 20. Unfortunately, though, a few weeks ago, I went to Silicon Valley with our management team, and I hung around with a lot of 20-year-olds. And I don't know how many of you had the chance to go there. This is the Google Cafe. And literally, I was the oldest person in there. And I spent time with them, and I'm like, yes, and I was telling them, I feel like I'm 20, I feel like I'm 20. And then I hung out with them for 2 weeks, and I'm like, you know what? Actually, forget it, I'm 40. It's a different mindset. And so what I wanted to share with you today was just some thoughts on how we have been trying to thrive and survive in a changing world, no matter what age you are, no matter what background you're from. This is Cindy Augustine, my global head of HR, my HR partner, an incredible lady. She was actually the head of HR at the New York Times. So for those of you who work in the media, you know that world has been changed even quicker than the advertising industry. And she said to me one day as we were looking at our industry, she said, Carter, there are so many trends connecting at the same time. And when they all come together and that inflection point hits, it's pretty fucking scary. And I think that's where we're getting to. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think we're getting there very quickly. And so I just wanted to share with you some thoughts of why that's happening. Now, bear with me. Don't freak out when you work in media or in direct or in advertising and I share this graph. This is more to make a larger point. We talked a lot in the old days about ideas in terms of high creative ideas versus more executional product communication. And I think the world we live in today, where there's a lot of discussion, is on data, where data is important and where it's not. And where you have high importance on data and ideas, you have where equation and measurements and algorithms rule. I think where you have creativity a little less important and data less important, execution is king. And I think where it's about high creativity and low data, that's where ideas live with utmost importance. And I think if you start just trying to sketch out roughly where the disciplines that clients work with and agencies live, you can see, media is very data-driven and direct to marketing services and promotions. Execution is everything. And then you have creative in the traditional sense of the world. So, and again, for me, where I think we're experiencing this at high speed is all these worlds are coming together. And so I think for clients, for agencies, we need to examine how we're going to bring all that together and why this is happening. So I thought I'd share with you some thoughts on where people who are succeeding are doing interesting things. I love this visual. I use this. I try and reuse this in as many presentations as possible because every one of you lives a crazy, intense life. And I know I do. And we're so busy trying to deliver against a specific brief, to do creative work for our clients that's going to drive their business. Frankly, dealing with our families, dealing with our telephones, we forget to listen. And I think this is so true. People come to us with answers every day, and we don't truly listen. Another visual that I love. But I think we are challenged every single day, and we have to think of ourselves as the mouse in the mousetrap doing the push-ups, and take that attitude that what doesn't kill us will make us stronger. But I do think the fundamentals of our business are always the same in terms of marketing. And this is a visualization of it. And of course, again, you can criticize the headphone, the big microphone. What's it even called? Speaker. Megaphone. I wasn't sleep deprived, and I still can't talk. This, I think, beautifully encapsulates what we do. I mean, we spend every day trying to take human insights, client product advantages, service advantages, industry, cultural insights, come up with a beautiful idea, and then bring it to life into consumers' lives. We have always been in the ideas business, and I think that's still true today. I think it's what you put in and how you engage has fundamentally changed. And I love this chart because I'm sure you've sat in lots of presentations where they go, well, maybe not so much here, but it's growing in every country around the world. Social media is where you need to be. And I think this is a much more interesting way to think about how people's lives have been changed and not. You know, look at this, video, 5 hours a day, and again, these are US statistics, but 5 hours a day someone spends with video and 3 hours with audio. I think that's a much better way for us as marketers to think about it because we know a little bit about that. Frankly, this is a statistic. When I did the tour in Silicon Valley, I was writing notes furiously, trying to learn lots of different things. This is an amazing statistic. I didn't know this, but Cisco did a study that very soon 90% of the internet is going to be film. That's something we know a little something about. So when we say we're living in exciting times, I truly believe it. People say we live in frightening times. When you see this, if you're in marketing, there's never been a more exciting time to be in this business. And then I just wrote down some notes, and I just love sharing statistics and stuff that blows my mind, because it does affect us, right? And there are 60 trillion, did you know there's 60 trillion web addresses in the world? And there's only 4 million apps. If I listen to people in marketing conferences, you sort of think it's probably 50-50. I just thought that was interesting. This is my favorite thing that just opened my mind too, is that it's not just about using these statistics to think about the past, but to get excited about the future. There are 3 billion searches a day. Okay, that's interesting. But what's most interesting when we went to see Google and they told us this was that 15% of those have never been seen before. So think about that. Every single day, 450 million searches around the world happen for something that has never been asked before in the history of Google search. It's pretty amazing when you start thinking about insights and learning and where we can take our marketing. And then when we think about advising our clients about how to help them drive their businesses, you know, Google, 0.5-second delay for Google is a 20% decrease in traffic. Talk about real-time problems. You know, Amazon, a 0.1-second delay sees their sales drop by 1%. So when we start advising our clients as agencies, we need to understand the real-time world in which we all live. And then my wife would absolutely support this. It's probably the biggest area of domestic dispute, other than our twin boys when they start misbehaving. The average person looks at their mobile phone 150 times a day. So I think, you know, the world in which we live, we know is changing, and I think you've seen a lot of these statistics, but I wanted to pick out the ones that I'm most excited by. And the shift is generational. So for those of you that are over 75 in the audience, you have to believe me, because you probably from personal experience do not believe that this is happening. Ambi, stop pointing at people, that's so rude. So when I'm explaining this to you, this isn't, oh, we're sitting in a festival and having an interesting conversation. This is the reality in which the people that we're trying to sell and market to live. And we, as marketers and agencies, work really hard to try and change that, change how we do things to make sure we're better at marketing. And here's the other thing. You may be sitting here going, well, in India, those statistics are American, and that's not all true. But Facebook, probably the most successful company of the last, well, one of the 3 most successful companies of the last few years, that's their mission in life, is to make the world more open and connected. Their mission in life is to make sure that everyone in India has the internet. And Mark Zuckerberg's taking his personal money, his company money, his best people to make that happen. In fact, creating the second company about bringing internet access to 2/3 of the world who are not yet connected. And I'm telling you this because if you think that what I've just described is not coming to India, to everyone, at some point it is. It's just a question of when. So I thought I would just take a little side route and say, because that Silicon Valley was a really, really interesting few days. And you know, we do Google partnerships, Facebook partnerships, and I learn a lot from them. So I just wanted to share our agency some of the things that we learned from them that you may or may not know. Now, I have to apologize. I was showing this to Rohit, our CEO, practicing yesterday. He went, "Carter, that's an African elephant, not an Indian elephant." I'm like, "How the hell do you know the difference?" He goes, "Oh, it's so obvious from the ears." So I'm afraid I apologize for showing you African elephants in India. But I wanted to share this with you because most of us live in a world, in the media world now, where we go, how do we make our numbers of 10% margin, 20% margin, 3% growth, whatever those numbers are? We're talking about single-digit, double-digit results. Even our clients, big multinationals, work in those sort of worlds. And we're competing against and learning from people who only go into business if they think they can multiply by a factor of 10. So I just find that interesting, and you know, we've challenged our management teams to start thinking that way as well. And this is how they do it. They try and work out, what is the biggest challenge on the table? What is the most radical solution I can think of? And what is the breakthrough technology to bring that to life? How often do we do that against a marketing brief? Not enough. We're starting to, but we need to do that more. That is the new world in which we live. And I just thought that was interesting. You know, change is happening. It's here. Most of you know Kodak went bankrupt. Are you all familiar with Shutterfly, or is that too American? Shutterfly, everyone, hands in the air if you know it? Okay, for those of you who don't, it's an app and you go on it, it downloads the pictures from your phone, you click, and you get printed photos delivered to your door. Well, Kodak knew a little bit about that, and they didn't move fast enough. So it's changing whole industries. I think the more common one we all know is Uber, that is just destroying the taxi business around the world, causing riots. Those of you that were in Cannes probably had to walk through hedges to get out of the airport last year with the French taxi drivers rioting. It's changing the world. And so one of the things I would just like to kind of temper is, when you see these statistics of where the world's going, you see what Silicon Valley are doing. Clients and agencies start freaking out and saying, we have to stop everything that we've been doing in the past, and we have to start doing everything different and everything new. And I just want to reassure the people here that that's not what we should be doing. You know, you have to start be aware of false prophets. We start having these festivals where we have these gurus stand in front of us and start talking about, you know, you have to throw everything out and start everything new. And I think you have to be careful. There are some marketing fundamentals that are as true today as they were 20, 30 years ago. It's how you do it and how you learn and how you engage that has evolved. You know, I'm English, don't be shocked. I live in America, but I'm British, and I took A-level politics papers in the early 90s. And and I swear to God this is true, one of the questions was, can Labour ever win again? And I looked at the question and went, really? And at the time, it was truly believed that the Labour Party in Great Britain would never be elected to office again. It was a period of Margaret Thatcher and then John Major. And then guess what happened? 3 years later, Tony Blair came to power as the head of the Labour Party and stayed in power for 10 years. This is a picture of Davos. This is like Goafest on I shouldn't say, if I say Goafest on crack, please don't quote me on that. Okay, but this is where you get the most, look at these people, some of the most powerful leaders of the free world, and the non-free world actually, these days. And the economists and all the brightest brains in the world got together to have these symposiums and speeches, probably much better than this one. But here's the thing. That picture was taken just a few months before the financial meltdown of the world, and none of them predicted it. It kind of questions why they do that meeting, but anyway, that's a different point. So I'm telling you this because you have to trust your own instincts. You need to take all this, we as a marketing community need to take what's going on in the world and add it into what we know. We don't need to throw everything out and start again, and we have to trust our instincts. You know, that's why I have planners. I believe in planning. I think planning is more and more important. I always call them my thermonuclear brains. My planning partner, Nigel Jones, is one of the founders of modern planning, and he's just way more intelligent than most people I know. And that's why I think planners are important, because if you have a good planner, they'll help you identify if that's a log or if that's a crocodile. And I think when you look at how we're helping clients with their businesses, when you're looking at a brief, when you're trying to work out this crazy world of the new media in which we live, you need the smartest people around you as clients and as agencies to work out how to move forward in a thoughtful way. You know, data is one of the big buzzwords, and here's what drives me crazy. Most marketers use data for only 6% of decisions today. So I think we're just at the beginning of that journey. I don't think we've cracked how to use data to unlock great creative. I don't think we've really helped clients nearly enough use data to drive their businesses forward, but I think we're heading in the right direction, and it's a pretty exciting time. And here's why it's interesting, because it's not just about, yes, you've got measuring demographic and measuring campaigns, but when I tell you those statistics and you think about the world in which we live, you can now use data in real time to understand people's lifestyle, understand how they use entertainment and what they consider great entertainment. And you have YouTube, which is one of the greatest real-time online testing platforms for understanding how creativity and people's lives come together for clients. So the whole world of how we think about insights, gathering insights, doing work is fundamentally changing. And we do it really well as an industry in some places, but not nearly enough. We owe our clients better when it comes to how we use data. And here is the truth. For all the creative directors in the room, hopefully there's a few, for all the creative people in this room, data is waiting for its Scorsese. I love that line. You all know who Scorsese is, I hope. But you know, our challenge to our creative partners, to Susan, my creative partner, is when are we going to start using data to make the creative product better, not just for driving sales? And I think it's the ultimate challenge. When we were in Silicon Valley, one of the top 3 people in Google we had a question and answer session. He actually said the biggest challenge of creatives and the industry, and he was talking about Google too, is to crack data and programmatic and mobile and data in mobile for great creativity, to really make sure that we're using marketing to the best means possible. So again, I just want to pause and think about this. So it's not about different. And I'd like to tell a little personal story to explain that. Because I think when you see the world and you're an advertising person or you're a client marketer, you start looking at this world and you go, I know nothing. And also, how am I going to get from here to here? And sometimes you always think about different. I have to be totally different. And that is the most crippling, difficult thing. It stops you from wanting to do anything. Because I can't be different. I am who I am, and I've got my creative. How am I going to do this? So I'd like to tell you a personal story about a way of thinking about this and the future and how you can succeed as each of you as an individual, but also as a team and a culture and as a marketer. So when I was 12 years old, my stepfather came into my life, an amazing man. And with him came this man, who became my grandfather. Grand-père, I would call him, French. He came from a family of inventors. And I don't know how many of you drink champagne here? Has everyone drink champagne? This is when no one admits to drinking champagne. I love it. I don't know if you know how champagne is made, but champagne, for hundreds and hundreds of years in France, they would line up hundreds of thousands of bottles, and every day, a team of people would have to turn the bottle 1/8 of a click, every day, year after year after year. It was the most crazy practice ever done. And by the way, they still do it today in the champagne. If you go to a champagne tour, you'll see these, and they turn the bottles every day. And my grandfather and his father, being very stubborn, said there has to be a better way of doing this. There has to be a better way of doing this. And so they went and studied it, and they worked out that a better way of doing it was actually to get a right type of barrel and to ferment the champagne and make the champagne in barrels, and then put them in the bottles. Of course, it drove everyone in the Champagne region crazy, and they still argue about it today. It's one of the 3 processes for making champagne, and he's called Pierre Charmat. It's called Process Charmat. And the reason I'm telling you that story is actually for 2 reasons. The first one is I realized I would never be that talented. And when I was 16, I went and worked in an ad agency, and I met creative people. And I felt like I was home. I found people like him. Creative people that can think laterally, that can dream, that can connect ideas in ways that no one else can. And that's why I love this industry, because I get to work with creative people every day, people like him. But for this talk about surviving and thinking about technology and where the world's going, the reason I wanted to share the story was, he didn't say, it's shit, we need to change everything. He said, he did speak like that actually. He said, you know, it needs to be better. There has to be a better way. So when you start thinking about a marketing brief, a client problem, how to use technology, just try and make things a little bit better. And I think you'll find it's the most liberating thing, because you don't have to think about, I have to different. Just think about better. Better. It's liberating. And here's the truth. Different doesn't always have value. Better does. You know, there are millions of patents every single year submitted of people thinking different. Only 10% of them are used. I think even less, 5. So think about better. You know, when I think about different doesn't have value, better does, that is such a truth. You know, everyone loves talking about Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs didn't invent the telephone. He made it better. He didn't invent computers. He made them better. So when you take all of this, I want to come back into three slides, 3 thoughts of a laddering order of how I think as marketers in our agency, with our clients, in the industry, I hope we are all thinking. We don't just talk about big ideas now. I think in this constantly evolving role where we're constantly learning and getting feedback in real time from data and from the world in which we live, we think about big ideas that are never finished. You know, we're always learning, we're never finished, and I think that's important. I think big ideas is where we're at, but I do think there's a really interesting model of how clients and agencies can think about the order of creativity. So this is from Google. It says the source is YouTube, but it's also Google use this. We use this as an agency. In fact, I was in a pitch just 2 or 3 weeks ago where we actually put all our strategy and creative into this model, which is you need hero work. You need content and creative that's what you want to say wrapped up into an emotional story that's memorable and invites participation. But you also want your brand to have a hub. The hub can be a website, can be an app, but it needs to be a living, breathing place where consumers, the brand, can participate and regularly be updated and be a destination for social and for a brand, an active place. And then you need to have help, what your target market is searching for. We talk about utility, being useful, making a difference in the world to people. And so you have ideas, and this is how I think they'll start to be formed and brought to life more and more in the future. And then in terms of execution, it's about connecting the dots. And my gosh, there are so many dots these days. It's why clients want a lead agency partner to help connect the dots. You know, identify your micro moments, deliver on the needs in the moments, and then measure and optimize. So, sorry, it's very corporate speak, but we are down in the weeds, so I just did want to get there. What always worries me when I go to these conferences is we have, and when I have meetings with clients, is we have speakers who talk about micro moments and just execute and just have fun and make it engaging. But it has to ladder up into something, or you're not helping clients build enduring, sustainable brands. And so, again, just a thought on succeeding and thriving in this day and age. I find this mentality is something that I really hold true to myself. You may say the bar was low with me. Nicole knew me back in the early days, so I'm constantly learning and trying to improve. There's a lot to improve on. But this idea of being never finished, I really like. You know, I think we should never think that a brief is finished, a piece of creative is finished. You know, someone once said about art, I don't know the exact quote, but art, you know, when you see a painting, it's actually always, the artist has abandoned it. It's never quite finished when you speak to them. So I also think what's really exciting is that we're living in such a brilliant time of change in terms of technology and innovation. And it's not just for Silicon Valley. There is now more ability to bring creative ideas to life than ever existed in the past. So I'm just going to show you a short film from Framestore, one of our partners, works with FCB, but also other ad agencies around the world. And they are able to bring things to life like never before. How many of you have seen Gravity with Sandra Bullock? Have you seen that? Hands in the air? Oh, wow. That's a pretty good showing. So Framestore did this entire movie, pretty much, in virtual reality. When the director first went to them, they said it's not possible to do this film. They used technologies never done before. So think about a creative brief. Think about being able to work with creative people who have these crazy ideas, and you have the account person who says it's not possible. If you're a creative person in this audience, I hope you challenge your account people to do work that has never been done before. And you know, what I'm really proud of that is they came to us as the ad agency, creative agency. They're now rolling that out as a product around 8 countries around the world. So that's really exciting. Now I have more work, but I'm running out of time, sadly, because I talk too much, as Rohit and Nakul always tell me. So I'm not going to show you the next example. I'm actually going to keep going. But if you're interested, we have that work, which is some really interesting innovation work that we did for UTech. So I just want to think about, you know, that's our attitude of never being finished, of always learning. And there's no way we could come up like creative work like that if we had not done that. But I did think it was also important to share with you an example where it's also a mindset. So if I look at Valspar, you probably don't know Valspar, paint. Think of a paint company. So a client comes to you and says, we need to find an emotional high ground for paint. Not an easy brief, okay? And again, it was a really talented team in Chicago that came up with this and created a space where now we're able to tell, it's opened up the whole world for that company. So I wanted to show you sort of a hero work from Google that we've, the Google bracelet, I always call it, and it's not at all, it's a Nivea bracelet. I want to share that hero work, but I also wanted to show to you, when you go back to finding an idea, you know, when I talked about the funnel, I think this is the type of thing that I think embraces as well the world in which we live, allowing us to do things we couldn't have done before. Can we play that film?
I don't know what color my family's eyes are.
I thought maybe I wasn't intelligent enough to tell.
Valspar worked with Enchroma, an optical lab, to bring color to everyone. Special glasses were developed to allow colorblind people to see color for the first time in their lives.
Wow. I'm getting misty. This is amazing.
When he's drawing, I see him going in and out of his crayon box like 150 times. And now I kind of know why. So is that what you guys see every day? Yeah?
That's what purple really looks like.
Oh my God.
Oh my god!
The sky's supposed to be this color?
Is this purple? Yes. What the
People seeing color for the very first time,
This is red.
wearing what appear to be magic glasses.
Look at your kids' eyes, Petey. They're so pretty.
super overwhelming?
Paint company Valspar just did something pretty wonderful for a group of colorblind people.
I've never been able to see this one.
So I'm showing you examples from around the world, but I did want to share something that I think hopefully is energizing for the audience. I know it is for me. I mean, India is the cradle of the human race, the birthplace of human speech, the mother of history, the grandmother of legend, the great-grandmother of tradition. Our most valuable and most instructive materials in the history of man are treasured up in India only. So imagine in this world what the creative community in India should be doing for the global advertising industry, for the marketing industry. You have a birthright for creativity that should be leading the world in what we do. And you know the best part about this? It's written by an American. Did you know that? Who would have thought? I love that. Mark Twain wrote that. Oh God, if only their politicians were that humble. Anyway, I have to live with that every day. And I wanted to close on something which ties in with the first presenter and actually with the presenter after me. A final thought on what really matters for every one of us, I think, to survive every day. And that's talent. You know, I don't know where the world is going, but I know I'm going to surround myself with the most creative and the smartest people on the agency and the client side to make sure I have fun and learn every day and make a difference in the world and for my clients. And that's living proof. That, believe it or not, is my executive management team. They're pretty fun. And I get to work with this group of people every day. And that's what makes going to work in the morning special for me. And I hope you will feel that way about the culture you belong to and the people that you work with every day. That is how we're going to get a successful future together. And so I guess I'm learning quite a lot. In the rehearsal this morning, I learned quite a lot just from listening to people. I hope there were one or two interesting things in that presentation for you. It's never been a more exciting time for our industry, and I think for the Indian marketing community. And I just wanted to close on one personal story that, again, really moved me quite a lot. I did a bucket list thing. There's a New York Times in America, and there's this iconic column called The Corner Office. And this journalist has written 2 books off the success of it. And I got the phone call one day saying, I want to interview you. So I went and spent 2.5 hours with him. I started saying, I'm not sure I can add much. He interviews people on leadership. I ended up interviewing him because I'm kind of interested in this sort of stuff. So I said to him, you've interviewed some of the top leaders around the world. You never ask about their industry. You ask about them as leaders and as people. What was the common theme? You know, and he said, you know, people come from different backgrounds of wealth, no wealth, geographic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, different traits and characteristics. He said, there's no one specific thing. The only thing I could say is that it's not the path, it's what you do with it. Those people that have been successful have taken every step of their journey, whatever it is, and they wrung it like a wet cloth to be successful. And so I just wanted to let you know, I love this business because I get to work with talented people. And I hope every one of you feel that there's never been a better time in our industry to be on the path that you're on.
So, Carter, I thought I'd start with one question that sort of flows out of the speaker before you. And she spoke of the empowerment of women in our profession, especially in the context of recent events. It's become an even more pertinent question. And I thought people in the room would like to hear the views of a CEO of a global agency.
Well, I'm really glad you asked it. I feel very, very, very strongly on this topic. I think it's an industry issue, and I think it's a larger issue everywhere in the world. I can't think of one country that has got it right. And I think men have to stand up for this as much as women. I feel the same way about women in the United States with diversity, where I don't think our industry has enough diversity. And I also feel very strongly about the LGBT community. You know, I think we're in a world in a creative business, but I also think we need to represent the people to whom we're talking. And, actually the speaker after me, by the way, just from the conversation, the speaker after me, who runs Isobar Worldwide, is a lady. And frankly, she could probably wipe the floor of any man or woman in terms of talent. And Susan, my actually Chief Creative Officer of FCB Worldwide, she's the only female CCO of a top 10 network, which I find shocking. I'm very proud of it, but that's not good enough. When I look at FCB in our offices around the world, we're not good enough. We've got to get our house in order. The industry and the ad agencies have to get their house in order. We have some global networks that have 30 people in their global leadership team, and a year ago, one of them had apparently no women, or 3 women. So I think it's the responsibility of male leaders, because we dominate the industry, to actively fix this. It's outrageous. If you have a sister or a daughter or an aunt or a family member who's in the working world, they have every right to be in management. And the fact that we have some agencies and we have some offices where we don't have a fair distribution is terrible.
And to an extent, we're getting away by saying, actually, look, we have a fairly even gender split, right? But that's rubbish. That is rubbish.
Total rubbish. In management, there is no equality in management between men and women right now today in our industry. But Susan's very funny, because I hired Susan as my creative partner, and she laughs. She goes, apparently I tell her she's not enough of a feminist, and she teases me for it, because she's right, and she says we should be celebrating the brilliant women in our business. That's the most important thing. She believes that's the best way to get. And I'm very proud of the fact that Rohit, one of his first hires was Swati, who's the only female CCO of one of the top ad agencies in India. And I think we've got to be brave, and we've got to make those it's not even a risk, it's actually kind of a sure thing. We've got to take responsibility and be open about the fact that like many industries, we've got to improve. It's not fixed.
Okay.
Sorry, I got a little bit carried away there, but I feel strongly about it.
In the interest of time, I'm going to move to the questions that have come up. So here's one that's not really related to your talk, but I thought it was another interesting one on the sort of moral, ethical side. How ethical is it for advertising to make a big brand survive and thrive when its credibility is in question? And this one comes from Ranjita of IIMK.
So the question is, if the brand itself has some ethical questions, why are we marketing it?
No, I think the question is, there are cases where brands go into crisis or over ethical or other related issues, and very often large campaigns are run to try and correct perceptions.
Aha, yeah. I see what you mean. Well, look, again, I think if you take everything we've talked about, I think what people expect, and I think the great thing about the world in which we live with social media is you can't really hide. And I think if someone has a concern with you as an individual, you as a leader, me as a leader, a brand, I think you have to engage in an open conversation. And I think you have to lift up the hood and say what type of company you are. And you have to have values, and you have to stand for something. Now, if a big campaign to tell people what you stand for is needed, then you should do a big campaign. But I think where that doesn't work anymore is that the message in the campaign and what it stands for has to have value. It has to have trust. And I think if you have someone who's a client who's made a mistake and they try and hide the mistake by sending a big brand message out to cover it up, I don't think that works today. I think what works today is when you make a mistake, you stand up and you apologize and you say you'll try and be better. And I think you're starting to see that now more. When big companies mess up, I think you get the CEO normally apologizing. Now, it doesn't happen in all cases, but I think that's the way to do it.
And social media has had a very, very...
I think social media has had a massive force for good in what we do as an industry. It forces people to make sure that we advise clients and that clients are clear about what they stand for and when they should stand up and be counted and when they should, frankly, be quiet.
So there are many questions on the same thing, just said in different...
Like
no, I'm
good. I'll get you some anyway.
In different words. So I'm going to pick one that I think has been sort of stated in the best way. This question comes from Natasha Seth of MEC. Instincts or data? What should drive advertising ideas? Since you talked about it.
That's a really great question. I wish Susan or Nigel were here. I'd say, that's a great question. What do you think? No, I think where data, I think actually it's a different part of the process, right? It's like leadership, where people say there's two types of leadership. There's analytical and there's instinctive, and you're one or the other. Well, I don't know of any leader that isn't analytical and instinctive, at least any good leader who doesn't do both. I think data, where we're not using data, is to drive real insights into why people behave the way they do and why people behave to our communication and interaction with brands. So I think you have to start with, I think data is actually a really great point to start, and you still also have instinct because you've got to work out where to go for the data. But I think when you're in that, I showed the megaphone and the funnel. I think that creative magic piece, that bit where you say to a creative person, here's the problem the client's having, here's the insight into the consumer, here's what we think we should be doing, but come back to me with an idea. That is where the creative special sauce, the instinct, the trusting a creative person, that huge leap where the creative comes back and goes, I have this idea. And the normal account guy's, girl instinct is, lady instinct is, what are you on? And then you sit with it and it grows, and suddenly you've created for the client this idea that will grow their business by a factor of 5 or 6, not 5%. So, and then once you do the work, and I think this is what's changed, when you do creative, and this is what's difficult for a creative person and a client and agency, you can get real-time data feedback on how it's working. So I don't think it's one or the other. I think in the marketing world in which we live, they balance each other in and out. But I think media and advertising will come back together again. There is no doubt about it. Because data is an intrinsic part of the creative process, and the creative process is an intrinsic part, I think, now of media too.
So we're out of time, but I'm going to ask you this one question on a lighter note, which comes from Nandan of Cartwheel. He's asking, what is your favorite movie by Scorsese?
Well, it has to be The Godfather. Has to be The Godfather, right?